Hi there, Smart Driver, talking to you tonight about left-hand turns. As a new driver, somebody getting their license, if you're going to get into trouble, you're going to get into trouble on a left-hand turn because you're going to misjudge the gap. That's what we're talking about tonight. A few people are here already. Marion is tuning in from dreary blah Vancouver. Who else is here? 85 is here. Hello, my friend. And yes, we are staying warm, but it's not cold here on the west coast of Canada. It is blah, dreary, right around zero most of the time, 5 degrees Celsius during the day, which is, I don't know, what, 40 degrees Fahrenheit there in the States. So, yeah, we're talking about left-hand turns. Most of the storms have left. Most people are just dealing with cold weather there where they're getting storms and whatnot. So, yeah, we can talk a little bit about winter driving as well to keep you safe in the wintertime and make sure that you keep the rubber side down and you don't end up in in the ditch. Excellent. 85 tuning in from Central Maryland. Love Maryland. It's great there on the eastern seaboard of the United States. Welcome, welcome. If you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what class of license you're going for. If you want to become a safer, smarter driver, we can help you with that as well. And I don't know, it's interesting. I'm looking very washed out tonight for some reason. And I didn't change the settings, but here it is. Here we are looking washed out. And Corey is here, the moderator, Bricks for Wheels. Corey does an excellent job of getting up the videos I suggest you have a look at for more information. And just bear with me for 1 sec. Sorry about that. I closed the curtains just to try and cut down some of the light. I'm not sure why it's so bright in here, but it is. Thank you, Marion. Awesome. Excellent. But I did close the curtains to try and reduce some of the light. I think the curtains are open. But anyway, that's what it is. I just figured it out. We are going into spring because there's more light. It's still light outside at 4 o'clock, whereas, a month ago it was dark. So here we are. It's actually still light outside. Jacob is here and Batty is here. Hello, everyone. Batty's tuning in from Phoenix, Arizona. Love Phoenix. Love Phoenix. Was there quite a number of times in my 20s, and I need to get back there again. Great place. So if you have any questions about passing a driver's test, definitely ask me. We're talking about left-hand turns, why they're so complicated, what's going on, the different things that you're looking at when you're trying to move into the intersection, which is the requirement in some states. The state of New York, for example, Corey will put up the video with Big Mac Sam. We did a mock driving test, which unfortunately I did not pass because I went into the test cold. I didn't do any practice. And you are not allowed to make right-hand turns in the 5 boroughs of New York City, which is Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island, unless signs allow it. Also on the island of Montreal, those are the places you can't make right turns on red lights. I made a right turn on a red light after getting distracted by a car up on jack stands on the side of the road, and you can see that in the video. And you can't do that. So as soon as you make a right turn on a red light in the city of New York, in one of those 5 boroughs, you automatically fail your driver's test. And this is what happened. It wasn't that I was unsafe or did anything else. It was just the fact that I made a right turn on a red light. So this comes back to one of the most important study points for your driver's test, which is to study and practice in and around the area where you're going to be taking your driver's test, because roads are going to be different. There's going to be nuances in the traffic and the way that the traffic behaves because of the infrastructure, the roads, and those types of things. The signs are going to be different. So practice in and around your test center where you're going to be taking your test. And people will come back to me over the years and have said to me, oh, it's not like this in Washington State. It's not like this in Utah. It's not like this in Missouri. Yes, it's not like that. Every driving test that you will take anywhere in North America, the United States and in Canada, is going to be different. Let me just rephrase that. Let me just restate that. every driving test that you take at different driving test centers is going to be different. Even if you take the same test at the same driving center, it's going to be different the second time than it was the first time, because you're going to have a different driving examiner. Every time you take your driving test, and so not every time you take your driving test, but if you fail your first attempt and you go back for another attempt on your driving test, they're going to put you with a different driving examiner, because they're trying to make it fair and not biased in terms of the driving test, because the first driving examiner may or may not have made a mistake, and they put you with another driving examiner for also purposes of safety, because they don't want you to be completely freaked out being with the person that failed you previously. They're going to put you with somebody else. I mean, unless you're in a really tiny test center somewhere where they only have 1 or 2 driving examiners, for the most part, they're going to try and put you with a different driving examiner. Excellent. I can see you a little bit clearer. Excellent. Awesome. So we got the lighting figured out. It's interesting because I look fine on my broadcasting software, but if you look at the YouTube preview, I look washed out. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll get it figured out post-production when we edit it and put it up on Saturday. So we're talking about left-hand turns, complicated left-hand turns, because there's a lot going on. You're looking at the traffic light, you're looking at the oncoming traffic, trying to determine the gap, and you're watching the pedestrians and vulnerable road users on the cross street, because they have the right of way and they are crossing. 3 things that you're looking at. And so there's 2 schools of thinking on left-hand turns. One is to move into the intersection and wait. However, the teaching that the way that I teach left-hand turns is to wait at the edge of the intersection, and when the gap presents itself in the traffic, the oncoming traffic, then you move into the intersection and meet the gap. That way you have a better line of sight, because you're back further and you can see the pedestrians on the side without actually having to turn your head and shoulder check. You've got a better line of sight of the intersection. You're safer, because if something happens, you're not in the intersection and you're not going to be involved with whatever altercation happens. And finally, you're going to expedite your turn. You're going to be able to make your turn faster, because you're getting up speed as you're moving into the intersection and meeting the gap. So the car comes, the gap is behind the car on the other side of the intersection. You're driving through with the other car, and as the other car goes by, you turn on your left-hand turn, and it will reduce the amount of time that you were in the crosshairs of the oncoming traffic. So you reduce the amount of time that you are in danger when you're making your left-hand turns. Connor, driving is about observation, and I remember what you were saying. Remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. I think that is important to say. Yes, it is, because driving is not always about the right answer. There's a lot of discretion, and it's always changing. And because traffic is always changing, you have to be always adapting and thinking, and driving is not a hit it and quit it thing. Like, you don't get in the car, put it at 1 speed and drive down the road. You always have to be adjusting your speed to control space in front of your vehicle. Space management, it is the most important tool in your defensive driving toolbox, because if you're not near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit something. And 3 to 4 second following distance at all times in front of your vehicle, and stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length. If you can do that and put that one skill in place when you're driving, you are going to significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash when you're driving. So do that. 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length. Your landmark for that is to be able to see the tires of the vehicle in front making clear contact with the pavement. The difficulty and the challenge with doing that and creating that space in front of your vehicle is that you are participating in social driving. Everybody else on the roadway is doing something different. The number 1 taboo that drivers do on the roadway is they tailgate. They're too close to the vehicle in front of them, and we know that rear end crashes are the number 1 crashes in North America, which indicates that people are following too close and they're not observing. They're not looking down the road, interpreting traffic patterns, and predicting the actions of individual road users. If you can do that, create that space, all of that is going to help you out. when you're driving, and to help you not only learn how to drive and pass your driver's test, but to be a safer, smarter driver. Elevator fan, wish your mom happy birthday for me on Thursday. That's awesome, my friend. Elevator fan, I'll be driving to Lafayette, Indiana tomorrow to run some errands. Do you have any good tips for making right turns off a multi-lane highway? Yes, multi-lane highway, know your exit. Elevator fan, know which exit you're going to be getting off, and then get over to the right. If you're not sure, just drive in that right-hand lane until you get to your exit and then turn, okay? But you've got GPS in your car, have it in a holder, and then that way turn the audio on your GPS, and that will give you lots of warning where you're going to need to turn and those types of things. Andrews, Jacob, in Toronto, it feels like some people barely keep a 1 second following distance. Jacob, yep, you're not wrong. You are not wrong. I've driven in Toronto, and it is tailgating, and rear end crashes are the number one crash in North America, and I suspect it's probably the world. So it indicates that people are following too close. And as I said, the biggest tool you have in your defensive driving toolbox is increasing space in front, 3 to 4 second following distance, because if you're not near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit something. Tyler, I'm working towards getting my license. How long should I practice to get used to the steering wheel? Tyler, a couple hours in the parking lot is what I suggest for learning how to use the steering wheel and get used to that, and how much you should be turning the steering wheel, because if you're still thinking about how much you have to turn the steering wheel to go around a corner, you really shouldn't be out on the roadway. And one of the best exercises that you can do is work in a parking lot, go forward, back up in a straight line, back into parking spaces, do your parallel parking, get some cones, set up some cones and those types of things. Corey put up the video for you for beginner drivers and the exercises that you can do in a parking lot. You really should not be thinking about how much you need to turn the steering wheel when you're out on the roadways. It just should be something that you know how to do before you get out on the roadway. So work in a parking lot and figure that out, my friend. Paul, my friend. Hi, Rick. If you were the examiner, what points would you give your students if they make a right turn, stick to the front end of the car in the intersection, but hesitate to turn right? I don't know what you're asking me, Paul, because most of the time you're not sticking your nose in the intersection on a right-hand turn. One of the things about a right-hand turn is you have to angle the car, because most intersections at most corners are rounded, and the more that round is, it's called the splay, and once you get into bigger intersections you get more splay, whereas if you get into a suburb, you're going to get corners that are almost square as opposed to rounded off. But you should always try to angle your vehicle pointing right behind the stop line first, and then the sidewalk, right? And you have to stop before the sidewalk, and you have to make sure that there aren't any pedestrians before you proceed. But you should be angled into the right-hand turn, because the other thing you want to do is, as you're coming up, you want to shoulder check, you want to make sure there's no cyclists, and then proceed up to the intersection. And the reason you're kind of angling into that corner is the position of your vehicle indicates to other road users, other traffic, what you're doing, and they can just look at your vehicle and they go, okay, that person's turning right because of the position of your vehicle. They don't even have to look at your traffic signal that you have on, okay? Marion, as much as possible, as Rick suggests, I practiced so much that I was tired of it. After a while, it's worth it. Yes. Slow speed maneuvers are to driving what scales are to music. They are what drills are to sports. You got to do them again and again and again. They are the fundamentals. It's not sexy, but it will improve your overall driving. And Marion is an absolute testament to that, about practicing slow speed maneuvers in a parking lot and then going out on the roadway. Because if you're comfortable with the primary controls of the vehicle, the brake, the accelerator, and the steering wheel, and you can work those going forward and you can work those backing up, it's going to improve all of your driving. All of your driving, and I will guarantee you that. So practice those basics, practice working in a parking lot. Excellent. Okay, excellent. So left-hand turns, that's what we're talking about today. We'll get through the presentation here, and then we'll come back. We'll spend the remainder of the hour answering your questions about passing a driver's test, being a safer, smarter driver. Blocking a roadway. In other words, you come out partially out to the intersection. Paul, no, you should not So, okay, Corey will put the video up for you on right turns, Paul, and then you can have a look at that video and then come back and ask me any questions you might have about making right-hand turns. But you're front into your car, so you have to stop at the correct stopping position first. So at a two-way stop sign, as opposed to a four-way stop sign, at a two-way stop sign intersection, you're gonna have to stop at the correct stopping position first, whether that's the stop line or stopping before the sidewalk. And then you're going to have to move up until you can see. You cannot stick your nose out into the intersection. I mean, unless there's something obstructing your vision at the intersection, but your car shouldn't be in the intersection to which you're turning at. Okay? You should not be in that intersection when you're making a right turn. You should just be angled around the corner so that you can see. All right? Look at that video. Corey will put that up for you, and then you can have a look at that and then come back to me and ask me if you have any questions. Dangerous. Yes, tailgating is dangerous and annoying. Marion, my problem is when I'm about on a double lane road when I'm waiting to turn left and a car's hiding behind a vehicle in the left lane. Yes, and I know what you're saying, Marion. So the car's coming towards you. There's a car in front in the lane closest to you, and then there's another car behind it kind of in its blind area, and the first car is masking or hiding that second vehicle. This is why it's so important as you're sitting there, you're mapping and tracking those vehicles that are coming towards you, because as they're back farther, you can see that car in the blind area, right? And you're kind of mapping and tracking. You're like, okay, there's a red car, there's a blue car, there's a yellow car. It won't be a yellow car in this day and age, but a gray car. But you kind of got to map and track those and keep track of those vehicles as they're coming towards you to keep yourself safe and not drive into that other vehicle that's hiding behind the first one. Lawrence, is it true FedEx and UPS drivers do not make left turns? Yes, they route themselves so that they can reduce the number of left-hand turns. They make right-hand turns as opposed to left-hand turns because of the danger and risk involved in left-hand turns. You're absolutely right. Tyler, any suggestions on how to release anxiety and overthinking while focusing on your driving stuff? Yes, Tyler, Corey will put up the video for you on fear and anxiety when driving and how to reduce that. All right. Excellent. Deep breaths. Yep. Sit in the car. Excellent. Exactly what Marion said. And have a look at those videos. Okay. Corey's put up that video on fear and anxiety. Thank you for that, Corey. Little technical challenge there. I changed the setting in the broadcasting software because YouTube told me I had to change the setting. So I changed the setting, and then we get issues with the whole thing. And now it's just being weird. Bear with me here. Okay, ludicrous left-hand turns. I said if as a new driver getting your license, if you're going to get into trouble after getting your license, this is the place you're going to get into trouble, is left-hand turns. So take these seriously. And if you have any issues with these, oh my God. I keep clicking it and it just keeps going back to something different. I do apologize for the technical difficulties here. Oh, quit it. I'm yelling at the computer. Sometimes I yell so loud during the day I scare the dog, and then I have to reassure the dog that I'm not yelling at the dog. Anyway, it keeps flipping to the second slide. It won't stay on the first slide. So we're talking about left-hand turns, the risk and the danger inherent in left-hand turns. If you're new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. We'll just go with it. Okay, we're just going to go with the second slide here. I drove truck in the 1990s while I was going to university, and it just keeps flipping through automatically. We don't have Alt Control Delete. We're Mac users, Marion. I've told you this before. Just hang on to that. Licensed commercial driving instructor in 1997. 2006, I graduated with my doctorate in legal history. While I was going to university, I drove buses for Greyhound and one of the regional bus lines in Australia. 2015, I started the online YouTube channel. It has been wildly more successful than I could have ever imagined. Yeah, this is just awesome. It just keeps flipping through the slides. There we go. I think what happened was I pushed the auto button. Left-hand turns. Have a look at that video, and that will definitely help you out with learning how to do and execute left-hand turns safely. And as well, look at the video look at the podcast for passing your driver's first time, and that will definitely help you if you are preparing for your driver's test and learning the skills that you need to learn in order to be successful on passing your driver's test. And I said the number one reason that drivers are not successful in passing their driver's test is because they do not practice in and around the test center. Every test center is different for a driver's test because the signs are different, the roads are different, the traffic is different, and practice during the time of day that you're going to be taking your test. So for example, if your test is at 10 o'clock in the morning, practice in and around the test center at 10 o'clock in the morning. Not every time, right? Just once or twice, just so you know what's going on. And many test centers, so say for example, they have parallel parking that they do in the parking lot at the test center, go in on the weekends and after hours and practice doing the parallel parking at that test center. Dangerous, you're crossing oncoming lanes of traffic that are coming towards you. This is why left-hand turns are dangerous. And this was the question that Lawrence asked me about UPS and FedEx, that they do not allow their drivers to make left-hand turns. It's not that they prohibit their drivers from doing left-hand turns. It's the fact that their dispatching and their routing is such that they avoid drivers having to make left-hand turns and rather make right-hand turns. So for example, they come in the morning, they come to the headquarters, they pick up whatever packages they need to deliver, and the circular route that is planned through computers avoids making left-hand turns and rather makes a loop in a clockwise direction as opposed to making left-hand turns. And that's how they do that, is by using computers and avoiding left-hand turns when they're dispatching their drivers. Okay, the other thing about left-hand turns is that you're going to be involved in a sideswipe crash. If you are in a crash at an intersection, you misjudge the gap, the vehicle is going to drive into the side of the vehicle. The terrible, awful thing about left-hand turn sideswipe crashes is that it's usually a passenger in your vehicle, a loved one, and there's no protection in that door that's going to protect the passenger, and oftentimes they are killed as a result of the sideswipe crash. So it becomes important to judge gap. It's going to take you 6 to 12 seconds to clear that intersection, depending on how big it is on a left-hand turn. So you need a gap of 6 to 12 seconds. And new drivers, I know many drivers don't do this, but some driving instructors will take their students down to an intersection and they will get them to determine how far away a car is at 6 to 8 seconds to determine that gap. And that's the only way you can learn how to do it. It's not something, it is something learned through experience. It is difficult to learn. Okay, learning left-hand turns start in residential areas. And as I said, who asked me about, forget, apologies, one of the smart drivers here asked me about the steering wheel. Go to a parking lot and learn how to use the steering wheel. Don't go out and try and figure out how much to use the steering wheel in residential areas and those types of things. It's just too difficult, okay? Get comfortable with the primary controls in a parking lot and then go to a quiet area with low density traffic, a suburb or places like that, where you can learn how to do left-hand turns with just focusing on the vehicle. You're not too worried about traffic and other road users. And in this image, points to a pedestrian. You have to be able to see the pedestrians because the pedestrians, for the most part, have the right of way when making left-hand turns. Find your landmarks, all right? When you're coming up in a suburb to make a left-hand turn, you need to be in line with the edge of the road onto which you're turning. That's when you start turning your steering wheel to make your left-hand turn. And make sure that you have sufficient gap of the oncoming traffic before you make your left-hand turn. And as in this image here, if there is a pedestrian, you have to give the right of way to the pedestrian. Okay? Shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. This is the other skill that you could put into your defensive driving toolbox that is going to significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash. Social driving. This is the first skill that drivers lose after getting their license. Shoulder checking. Shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. Every time you change directions of the vehicle, every time you move the vehicle sideways, shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. And when in doubt, anytime that you turn the steering wheel, shoulder check. And sometimes you're going to have to do it 3 times depending on how long you're at an intersection. Now, people will come back to me and say, oh, I have proximity sensors, I have blind spot detectors, they don't have to shoulder check. These observation technologies that are in your vehicle are just a backup to good driving skills. Shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. It's more important than being a carpenter, right? Measure twice, cut once. It's not just going and getting another piece of wood when you're driving. It could potentially save your life when you're shoulder checking. All right, 2 schools of thinking when it comes to making left-hand turns. Many driving instructors teach their students to move into the intersection. Some driving tests even require that students move into the intersection. I do not teach that, and it is not safe, and it is not the best practices, and it is not best practices in the realm of defensive driving. Wait at the edge of the intersection. So the landmark for that is your front steer tires on the front crosswalk line, not behind the stop line. If you're behind the stop line, you're way back, too far back from the intersection, and you can't see. The reason for that is you have a better line of sight. You don't have to shoulder check to be checking the pedestrians on the cross street. You can sit there back at the edge of the intersection. You can look over, you can see the pedestrians on that cross street, any slip lanes over there, and you can see and watch the oncoming traffic, and you can watch the traffic light. Because if it's busy at an intersection, you have to watch the traffic light. And you can turn left on a yellow light. On a driver's test, the reason that many students fail when the light turns yellow is they hesitate. They don't go the instant the light turns yellow. The instant the light goes yellow, you have to start moving straight forward into the intersection. And when you've double, triple checked that the oncoming traffic has actually come to a stop, then you can make your left-hand turn. The other reason for waiting at the edge of the intersection is you're committed to the intersection, but you're not in the intersection. Okay, going on yellow, I already kind of got ahead of myself on that. Going on red, if you're sitting there and you miss it, as sometimes happens with even experienced drivers, you're sitting at the intersection, you're waiting, you're watching the oncoming traffic, you get distracted by a pedestrian or something else going on the cross street that you're watching and waiting for as well on your left-hand turn, and all of a sudden the light goes red. It's a discretionary thing. You've got to make a decision about whether you're going to move through the intersection or whether you're going to sit there across the crosswalk and you're going to block pedestrians. Sometimes it's better just to wait and be across the crosswalk and annoy pedestrians who are walking around your car as opposed to moving in the intersection. But if you do get deep into the intersection or too far into the intersection on your left-hand turn, you do have to clear the intersection. Keep in mind, you own the intersection. But again, double, triple check that the oncoming traffic has come to a stop and then clear the intersection. Okay? Multi-lane roads, make sure that you're watching the vehicles and the traffic on the slip lane, on the other lanes of traffic on the other side of the intersection. Because if you come up to an intersection and there's a slip lane on the far side and you move into your left lane, there's a good chance that the person making the right-hand turn is going to drift over into your lane. Half of cars, 50% of drivers will make a turn on a multi-lane road and they will drift from one lane to the other lane. All right, know that. So protect yourself. Be a defensive driver by either moving in behind the other vehicle or moving in front of that vehicle. Do not merge in beside another driver because you can't trust them when you're turning, because as I said, half of drivers drift over into the lane. Know that for the purposes of your driver's test. All right, we're almost done the presentation here. The technology is holding out for us. All right, good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. All right, we're through the presentation here. Hopefully none of that technology is going to deter us. I'm not sure what's going on. What I was saying, Marion, at the end of the presentation there, I do apologize about the technical issues that we're having right now. I'm not sure what's going on. As I said, I changed a setting in the broadcasting software because YouTube was indicating that I needed to change it. And I've been having some difficulties with the audio and the video lining up in the last few weeks. So I was trying to change something, and then of course it's messed everything up on me. So here we are, having technical issues. You'd think in this day and age with AI that all of this stuff would work, but it doesn't work. Marion, what I was saying is that when you're making a left-hand turn and there's a slip lane on the other side, so a right turning lane, you don't want to merge in behind. So you're making your left-hand turn, they're making their right-hand turn. You don't want to merge in together beside the other vehicle. You either want to slow down or speed up so that you merge either in behind that person or you merge in front of them. You don't want to merge beside another vehicle to keep yourself safe, because you result in a sideswipe crash. Now, sideswipe crashes most often result in property damage. They don't often result in injuries or deaths amongst people. So this is another piece of information in terms of defensive driving. You have the choice between a head-on collision and a sideswipe crash. Pick the sideswipe crash every time, because most of the time a sideswipe crash is only going to result in property damage. It's not going to result in you getting injured and those types of things. And there's an article, Why We Should Be More Afraid of Driving. It's in the Atlantic newspaper. It was written by a journalist who was in a car crash. And I think what happened is that somebody pulled out of a side street and was making a right-hand turn, and they pulled out in front of him, and then he swerved to avoid them and drove into oncoming traffic. Well, unfortunately, the vehicle that he hit was a big jacked up truck. The truck came up over the hood of his car and then squashed the dash down, the whole dash onto his legs, and of course crushed his legs in the subsequent crash that happened. So you have a choice between a head-on crash and a sideswipe crash. Pick the sideswipe crash every time. But if you are at an intersection and want to turn left, the person doing the right turn has the right of way, don't they? Not necessarily. No, they don't. Okay, Marion? They have a give way sign, a yield sign on that. Most of those right turn lanes, if you start looking at them, most of them will have a give way yield sign. And if they come in and they drift over into your lane, now again, as I said, you don't want to have a crash, right? You just want to let off the throttle. So that's the best thing to do. They don't necessarily have the right of way. They have a give way sign. And that means, not drifting into the other lane after you make the right-hand turn. But if you watch traffic, half of drivers will make a right turn on a multi-lane road and they will drift over into the left lane. Same thing, people making left-hand turns, they will right away drift over into that right lane without signaling. 85, how many points can you accumulate in sideswipe crash on your driver's license? It depends on the severity of the crash on how many points are assigned. I don't know. So it's Corey, yeah, the audio is a bit off sync now after the reset, so the solution did seem to be working before the hiccup. Okay. And so the audio is off yet again. Yay! The audio is off. Excellent. Something else to mess around with the edit. It's just going to waste my time. Oh, awesome. The other thing is there's an update waiting on the OBS software, so I got to do that as well. So I do apologize. 85, you are most welcome. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't answer that question in terms of the crash. It's going to depend on the severity of the crash. It's going to depend on if there are any charges laid. Somebody did something negligent, failed to yield, failed to give the right of way, was speeding. There are so many factors involved in a traffic crash, and the police that are investigating and what kind of investigation they do, and whether there are any convictions for charges. So all of this is going to depend on what's happening or what will happen subsequently, as what will happen as a consequence of that traffic crash and the aftermath. So I can't really give you a definitive answer on that. Lawrence, what do you think of the diverging diamond interchanges, which has no left turns at Niagara? Do you think we should make more of them? They are definitely, Lawrence, they're definitely embracing those in the United States with interchanges. And yes, for drivers, they're a little confusing at the beginning because they're, as you said, it's a diamond interchange. It's kind of an S curve going through the intersection or going over the interstate or freeway, and I would need to do more research on them, but as I said, there's scores of them in the United States, so they are embracing them. And I haven't been there, but maybe this summer I'll take a drive down and go through and have a look at it and see what I can say about them for sure. But definitely interesting. I didn't know we had any in Canada yet. I seen them in the United States. But, you know, the diverging diamonds to eliminate left-hand turns is comparable to the jug handles in New Jersey. And, you know, but nobody else has put the jug handles in because of the amount of real estate. Now, the thing with the diverging diamonds is they don't take any extra real estate. They're just crossing traffic, right? Which is kind of interesting about what they're doing and eliminating left-hand turns. But, you know, they're making traffic safer. At least that's the intention of what they're doing. Whether they, in fact, they are making traffic safer, I don't know. It's kind of like roundabouts, right? Roundabouts has less points of conflict. They move more volume of traffic and they reduce urban noise pollution. These are the benefits of roundabouts. But then you get American engineers and Canadian engineers who are building roundabouts, and they're making roundabouts, they're making roundabouts traffic calming devices, right? That's a word that's right up there with fur baby and play date. I just want to it just irks me to no end because there's no such thing as a traffic calming device. And roundabouts should not be traffic calming devices. And I'll tell you exactly what they do with traffic calming devices. You have four lanes of traffic coming into the roundabout, and what they do is they take the roundabout and they make it cockeyed. They change the roundabout so that instead of coming in straight into the roundabout and turning, you come in on this kind of S into the roundabout, and they make it a traffic calming device, which is completely, utterly idiotic on the part of traffic engineers. You can't make a roundabout and have it as a dual function where it's also a traffic calming device. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's just a ludicrous thinking. Imran, hi Rick, any tips on night driving and avoiding the glare of other vehicles, headlights obstructing your full view when changing lanes? Oh yeah, night glare, headlights, especially with the new headlights, you know, that are basically the sun, which are beaming into your eyes. Yeah, if other vehicles are coming towards you, you got to look down towards the edge of the road. You got to look far down the road, keep kind of that tunnel vision and looking at other traffic that you're following at night. You have to protect your night vision because at night, our pupils open and dilate to allow more light in. But the problem is that when you get, you know, inundated with this light from these new vehicles in your face, what's going to happen is it's going to erode your night vision and you're not going to be able to see. So you got to figure out ways to preserve your night vision so you're not looking into the lights of the oncoming vehicles. You got to be looking down at the edge of the road or looking farther down the road and looking at the traffic in front of you to preserve your night vision when you're driving. Marion, what is a diverging diamond interchange? Yeah, diverging diamond interchanges it's an interchange where they've set up the infrastructure on the overpass over the interstate where you do a serpentine across the overpass, and the reason that they do that is to avoid left-hand turns to get onto the interstate. So most places you're going to come across the overpass. You're going to come across the overpass. You're going to make a left-hand turn onto the entrance out to the freeway. And what they've done rather is they've made a serpentine, and then you come across and then you make a right-hand turn right at the roadway. I'll need to look them up and put something up for you on a diamond interchange, but essentially what they're doing is they're eliminating the left-hand turn for you to make onto the interstate. And apparently it's one of the ways that they're doing it, that they're eliminating right-hand or left-hand turns at the interchange to get onto the freeway or interstate. Yes, Marion, excellent. Yes, raining at night and trying to, you know, avoid the bright lights of the oncoming traffic. That is definitely going to complicate things because you get the reflection of the ambient light off the rain and water on the roadways, and it makes it even more difficult to see at night. It's almost as bad as driving in glaring sun and being able to see in the daytime with that glaring sun. Marion, you're most welcome. Yeah, you learned something about diamond interchanges. Nerd, yeah, we probably need a whole video on that. Night driving has become awful. Yes, we'll do another video for you for sure. Excellent. We got that question. Uh, Excellent. Glad we can help out. So left-hand turns, we're talking about left-hand turns tonight. We've had some technical issues. I do apologize about the technical issues. Imran, you are most welcome, my friend. We're talking about left-hand turns for the purposes of passing a driver's test. Defensive driving, as I said, if you're a new driver and you just recently got your license within the first year of getting your driver's license and you get into trouble when you're driving, you're going to get into trouble on left-hand turns. And we know the severity, we know the risk of having a crash on a left-hand turn. Some companies, UPS, FedEx, other companies will dispatch their drivers in a clockwise direction in an attempt to eliminate left-hand turns for their drivers because they know the severity and the danger and the risk involved with making left-hand turns. So I give you the best defensive driving practices to put in place to keep yourself safe when making left-hand turns. Two schools of thinking. Some will teach you to move into the intersection on making a left-hand turn. I do not teach that. I teach you to wait at the edge of the intersection. So in other words, your landmark for that is your front steer tires on the front crosswalk line. Do not wait behind the stop line. You're too far back and you cannot see into the intersection. And there's a lot going on in an intersection when you're making a left-hand turn. There's three things that you're watching. You're watching the traffic light, you're watching the oncoming traffic and determining your gap to make your turn safely, and you're watching the pedestrians and other vulnerable road users on the cross street, because those vulnerable road users have the right of way. And there are many a driver who've driven into pedestrians on the cross street when they're making their left-hand turn because of glaring sun, or they're not paying attention, or something goes awry when they're making their left-hand turn. Know that when you're turning left. And sometimes you're going to have to watch those three things simultaneously. And the reasons for staying back at the edge of the intersection are threefold. Okay, first, you have a better line of sight of seeing the pedestrians and the road users on the cross street who have the right of way. You don't have to shoulder check and look out the side when you're at the edge of the intersection. Second, you can determine your gap better because you can map and track traffic as it's coming towards you. When you start moving in straight into the intersection is when the car in front of your gap hits the stop line on the other side of the intersection. Then you start driving straight into the intersection. Finally, the last reason for staying back at the edge of the intersection when making left-hand turns is owing to the fact that you will make your left-hand turn faster. You will be in the crosshairs of the oncoming traffic for less amount of time, owing to the fact that as you're driving straight into the intersection, you're gaining speed and will be able to make your turn faster, as opposed to starting from a dead stop, sitting in the intersection. Those are the reasons for staying back at the edge of the intersection. Better line of sight, better able to track and map your gap on the other side of the intersection. You can watch the traffic lights, and you're going to have more speed as you're moving through the intersection and making your left-hand turn. Nerd, my wife's learning how to drive, and even after 9 professional lessons, she doesn't feel comfortable. Feels bad because I can tell her she might be a hazard on the road. So sad how we push everyone to drive. Yeah, 9 lessons. Has she had much practice outside of those 9 professional lessons? Because, nerd, one of the things I'm going to say to you is that think of driving lessons like university classes. The general rule for university classes is that for every hour of instruction that you have at the university, you're expected to study 4 or 5 hours for every hour of class time. It's the same thing with driving instruction lessons. You're expected to have 4 or 5 hours of driving for every hour of instruction that you have with a professional driving instructor. Many people don't do that. They just drop their kids off to a driving instructor. They get 10 lessons and they think that that's all they need. You can't learn how to drive in 10 lessons. I will just say that people need a lot more driving experience. Most people need the average person needs between 40 and 75 hours of driving time before they're going to feel comfortable in the vehicle. And I can see why she doesn't feel comfortable after 9 lessons. I'd imagine in 2026 wouldn't be great if people could just go about their entire life without having to drive, instead of being a bad driver on the road and risking others. It's not that she's a bad driver nerd. I wouldn't say that she's a bad driver. She just doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have the amount of time that she needs behind the wheel. All right. Okay. 85. Yeah. Driving lessons are expensive since COVID. Unfortunately, 85. Everything is bloody expensive since COVID. I went past the meat shelf in the grocery store the other day, and they're talking about, oh, groceries only went up 25 or 30%. Bullpucky. Bunk. That's not true. The hamburgers, the 8-pack of hamburgers that I used to buy at the grocery store is now twice the price. It was $12 and change before, and now it's $26. The coffee I buy used to be $13 and change. Now it's $26. Some of the stuff that I've bought has doubled in price, and meat is just stupid. And you're absolutely right in terms of driving instruction. It's probably $100, $150 an hour now to get driving lessons with an instructor. Groceries went up 57%. Yeah, that's not surprising. 57%. I feel it every time I go to the grocery store at about how much it costs. 7X, can a person with a learner's license drive with someone who's got their N license? It depends where you are, 7X. It depends. You would need to look up the rules for your particular state or province. I know in the province of Ontario, Canada, you cannot. You have to be with somebody who has had their license for 4 years. Other places, it's different. They may where you're living. 85, driving lessons, including borrowing a car, really hard and challenging to get my hands on. I had to call around in Central Maryland. Yes, it's not easy. I know that for sure, 85, and I definitely empathize for sure. Marion, don't do that. It's heartbreaking to see the prices. I don't know how they can change prices like that and get away with it. Marion, well, here's the other thing, Marion. I go to the wholesale club, and I used to go to the wholesale club exclusively. Now I drive all over town for buying groceries. Before Christmas, onions, a little bag of onions that I used to buy, the 3-pound bag of onions was couple of dollars and change. Then it went up at wholesale club. It was almost $5. Went to Walmart. The same bag of onions was $1.50. Go to the wholesale club. The wholesale club is owned by Loblaws. Okay. Same thing with the superstore. So the cheese that I buy, the 5-pound block of cheese that I bought, went up to $36. It was $22 before COVID. So it's gone up. What's that? Like 60%. So it went up to 60%. Went out to Superstore. The same block of cheese is $6 less. It's $29 at Superstore. The same company, Loblaws. So why is it $36 at Wholesale Club and it's $29 at Superstore for the same block of cheese? I don't understand. I don't understand. Anyway, I digress in the cost of things. we got off here on talking about the cost of living and how much stuff costs. You're not wrong. Yes, we have 85. Yes, we do have Walmart here in Canada. We do. Corey, giving the images of the Diamond Interchange a quick glance, that actually looks pretty cool. Although if roundabouts give unfamiliar people anxiety, I do wonder how new drivers have reacted to this. Yes, exactly, Corey. That's the thing about the Diamond Interchanges, is that people who are using them are going, what? I mean, people can't even use roundabouts. I mean, the new roundabout, that's also a traffic calming device here in Vernon, I get cut off every time I go into it. I mean, I'm halfway through the roundabout and people just like drive out in front of me. They think that they have the right of way. So exactly what you're talking about, Diamond Interchanges, people are just going to lose their mind. 7X in Canada, please protect your mental health. First, bills are expensive. Second, groceries. Third, your call maintenance. Fourth, child care, and the list goes on. The world hasn't recovered from COVID. 7X, no. The cost of fighting that disease was high. It was a very high cost. Epic, my friend, for driving schools, why do people taking their road tests end up using this service? That is their road test service. That is a review. Then the actual test will also cover the dangerous moves. I don't really know what you're saying, Epic. Can you rephrase that if you don't mind, my friend? I didn't really understand that. But what Epic, I think what Epic is trying to say is that if you go to a driving school, Oftentimes, I do counsel you to take, if you've taken 10 lessons with a driving school, use their car for the driving test, okay? In the weeks leading up to your driving test, whatever car you're practicing in, if that's the driving school car, use that car for your driving test. Your chances of passing your driving test are going to be much higher. As opposed to, you went out with your folks, you're driving the station wagon, you took a few lessons before your driving test because you wanted to make sure you passed, and then you come back to the station wagon after you've been driving a Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla at the driving school. It's really not going to work. And pedagogically speaking, the way that we teach, it's proven because people that take classes, students that take classes, and they're in one classroom and then they do the test and they do it in another classroom or a different place, they don't do as well, okay? They do better if they're in the original classroom where they took the course. So it's the same thing with the car. Make sure that the car that you've been practicing in the weeks and months leading up to your test, take that same vehicle so you're going to be successful on your driver's test. 7X, I get cut off at roundabouts all the time. It's no surprise. Believe me, a roundabout is just like making a left turn at a traffic light. 7X, it's not the same as making a left turn. They're safer because there's fewer points of conflict in a roundabout. It's annoying that people cut you off, but we're expecting it, okay? We're not going very fast through the roundabout, and we're watching that entry point as we're going past it, making sure that people aren't driving into our lane at roundabouts. I love roundabouts. I think they're the best. I don't love them when engineers get involved and they make them into traffic calming devices, right? It's the line from Jurassic Park when they get into the cars and the entropy guy played by Jeff, I can see him with his dark glasses on and his big leather coat, and he's like, oh my God, we're in the hands of engineers. I think that every time I go through that new roundabout. 85, have a good rest of your day, Rick. Please stay warm as I'm here in Central Maryland. Thank you again. You are most welcome, my friend. Have an awesome night. Epic, will the driving school road test service review also cover turning across oncoming traffic that is left turn in North America due to the drive right while in? Okay, so I know what you're saying. Yes, they will teach you left-hand turns, and they will take you on the route that is going to be the test, and they'll help you out with all of that. Epic, my friend. Nerd, roundabouts just prevent fatal collisions. That's all. Yes, they do. And most of the time, it's only going to result in property damage if you do get into a crash in a roundabout. Why do you like fur babies? My kids love them. Marion. Yes, he's part of the family, but he's just a dog. He's a dog. Okay? Not a fur baby. Not my baby. Okay? He's a dog. I grew up on the farm, okay, with cows and horses and pigs and dogs. He's just a dog, okay? Don't get me wrong, I love him to death, but he's not a fur baby, okay? Not a fur baby. Not a play date, because why do they have to make a date to play together, okay? Traffic calming devices. These are the words that drive me crazy in the 21st century. Jeff Goldburn, yes, he's awesome. The entropy guy. Everything descends into chaos. Entropy or, yes, entropy. Anarchy. Entropy, anarchy. I think it was entropy. Okay, 7X in Vancouver, I go nuts a lot of the times. I feel better taking public transit, but my advice is that in Vancouver, driving is like a game of chess. Lots of people just annoy me. And yeah, it's a little bit like chess. More like backgammon, I think, because it's not as complicated as chess. I'm not a good chess player, so... Nerd, yep, this city has gone to hell. Excellent, Marion. Yes, fur baby. Just a friend of mine calls me up and she drives me nuts because she's like, can the fur babies have a play date? She's got a Frenchie too, right? So I'll come through the roundabout, the traffic calming device to bring them to the play date, the fur babies. Yes. All right. Okay. Left-hand turns, passing a driver's test, keep yourself safe. The best defensive driving tool you can have in your toolbox is space management, space in front. Okay. It is too close. Rear end crashes are the number one crashes in North America, which means that people are driving too close to one another, okay? 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic, one vehicle length. If you can do that and add shoulder checking in, you are going to significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash and keep yourself safe. Left-hand turns, 3 things that you're watching almost simultaneously. Pedestrians on the cross street, oncoming traffic, looking for your gap, looking at the traffic light, okay? Staying back at the edge of the intersection so you have a good view of the intersection. You can see your gap. When the car in front of your gap hits the stop line on the other side of the intersection, you start driving straight into the intersection. If the light turns yellow, turns red, the instant that light turns yellow, and this is one of the things that makes it challenging, is because you're watching 3 things. You've got to keep an eye on that. Drive straight into the intersection as soon as the light turns yellow. Have a bit of speed. Make your left-hand turn. They're dangerous because of sideswipe crashes. Oftentimes there's a loved one in that passenger seat and they're the one that's going to get T-boned. There's nothing in the car that's going to protect them. And yes, people will come back to me and say there are support bars in those doors. Yes, they are. But the door is this wide. There's a piece of tin on this side. There's some plastic on this side. There's a support bar in there. There's nothing in there that's going to protect you. As well, where you're sitting in the car and the height of the impacting vehicle is right at your torso where your vital organs are in your body. So if you're lucky, you will survive a T-bone crash. And I have had people, smart drivers over the years, that have come back to me and said that they survived a T-bone crash. And God bless them. But for the most part, you're not going to survive a T-bone crash. It's going to be fatal. Know that. Take your time. Go when you're absolutely sure it is safe to go on a left-hand turn. And we know the severity of these because there are companies that have delivery services, UPS, FedEx, other companies that dispatch their drivers in such a manner that they will eliminate and send them out in a clockwise direction to avoid them making left-hand turns at intersections. Right-hand turns, as Epic reminded us, in Japan and Malaysia, in Australia and Britain and other places that drive on the left. So they're going to reduce the risk and shore up safety for people at intersections when making left-hand turns. 7X, I recommend people who are preparing for a driver's test to do a mock test before their driving exam. Absolutely. If you have not done driving lessons with an instructor before your driver's test, book an hour with a driving instructor. They will take you out on a mock driving test. They will take you on the route. They're not going to tell you they're going to take you on the route, but they'll take you out. They'll do the slow speed maneuvers at the places where the examiners do the slow speed maneuvers, the parallel parking, the 3-point turn, and the backing into a parking space. And they will give you feedback on the skills that need to be improved so that you're successful first time. Now, it's expensive. It's $150, couple $100 for you to go out and do a mock driving test. However, think about how much time it's going to take you to rebook your driving test, rebuild your self-confidence if you're not successful the first time. So the best way to ensure that you're going to pass first time is to book 1 hour in a mock driving test with a driving school and going out with them and getting feedback on your skills and abilities to be ready for a driving test. Gersham, tomorrow's my class 4 restricted road test, pre-trip inspection prepared. Hopefully the road test will be okay. I hate other impatient drivers on road tests. They get on my nerves. Good luck in your class 4 tomorrow. You're going to do awesome, my friend. And yeah, remember to breathe. That'll cause your body to relax. Paul, what kills me is when drivers turn left with an oncoming vehicle approaching without judging sufficient gap. And yes, and that's why they get into trouble on left-hand turns. They fail to judge the gap. Imran, space gives you time and time gives you options. I've always remembered that from you, Rick. I've always told my drivers that as a dispatcher for school buses, yes. Space buys you time buys you options, options prevent crashes. Absolutely, okay? 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic, 1 vehicle length. That's your biggest defensive driving skill that you can put in your toolbox and use every time. Create the habit, and then after 90 days, you don't have to think about it anymore. So, excellent. Imran, that's really great that you remembered that and you're using that with your truck driver, with your bus drivers rather. That's really awesome to hear, my friend. Nerd, it's kind of weird listening to my siblings compare their fur babies to infant daughter. I didn't say anything. You can tell them that, it's on my list of words that just drive me crazy. Fur baby. Because always in a hurry. Yeah, they're always in a hurry for sure, Paul. Excellent. All right, left-hand turns that we were talking about tonight. Keep yourself safe. Stay back at the edge of the intersection. Observe, 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 and don't go unless you're absolutely sure that the gap is sufficient to make your left-hand turn. If you're not sure or you're not comfortable making left-hand turns, go out with somebody that you trust, go out with a driving instructor. All of that will help you out to stay safe when making left-hand turns. Marion, when you were talking about fur babies, I thought about the kids' toys. That was a thing back in the day. They were a robot-type toy. That's what I thought you meant. No, it's not what I meant. Fur babies. 7X, if you're using your car the whole time, I recommend using the car that your driver's test and mock test. Yes, absolutely. Exactly what 7X just said there. That's brilliant. All the best. Okay, excellent. Stay safe, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.